What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Freedom Formula podcast. So, this week's episode is awesome because it is a segment from the internal podcast I've Made This, which is normally exclusively for the ears of Made This franchisees that Stephen and I did. We talk about a variety of different topics, and I thought it'd be awesome to share with you guys. Today, we dive into starting with why don't people leave the 9 to 5 more often? And we're going to dive into that plus a bunch of other really cool stuff. So, stay tuned and enjoy.
Why don't more people leave the 9 to 5?
Why don't more people leave the 9 to 5? My honest opinion is I don't think everyone should. I think if you look at it, I'd say like, I'm going to make up numbers, Stephen, but 80% of people probably glorify entrepreneurship. And maybe like 20% of the people can actually do it based off of like the risk and the stress and things like that. So I think there's such a delta between people who want to leave their 9 to 5 and then people who actually would be in entrepreneurship. But a lot of people dream about it, right? So within the people dream about it, there's people who, I'll give different categories. They are fit for entrepreneurship and they should dive into it. There's people who are not a fit for entrepreneurship and they still dive into it, and people who should just stay in their 9 to 5 and like things like that, right? So let's talk about the different categories and I think the mindset. A lot of people who want to leave and they are fit. Those are the guys I'm trying to talk to and be like, bro, it's better over here. Like, come on over, right? I think a lot of the reasons they don't is it's kind of a mindset around risk. And a lot of it comes from parents. A lot of it comes from like what society tells you. And I've kind of noticed this a lot. And I'll explain the comparison I've seen. But society tells you it's safer to have a 9 to 5, right? Stability. That's how it's always been. They come back to like the 1950s, nuclear family, whatever. Like you crave stability, which is a job, a pension plan, all that kind of good stuff. So that seems safe. And they didn't grow up with money. That seems like a safer option. And their parents would tell them, get a job and stay in a job, build your base, and then, de-risk. So I think they're typically inclined for de-risk. And that's the reason they don't leave the 9 to 5. And a lot of 9 to 5s like Deloitte or these big consulting companies, they have it down to a science of like the amount of carrot to dangle in front of you to make sure you stay in your job. It's like just enough money to make sure you don't quit, give you just enough promotion to make sure you stay in there. It's kind of endless. And also one thing I've noticed just with society in general, the US is a little bit different, but I don't think the government really wants anyone to leave the 9 to 5. Like, and I'll say this, like in Europe, and Stephen, you might have an answer for this. I talk to people in Germany, right? And if you're an entrepreneur, you're like a black sheep. The government makes it stupidly hard for you to be an entrepreneur. They don't want you to be an entrepreneur. They want you in the system, paying the taxes, paying medical, kind of going around there. So I do think that there's a lot of external forces which are causing people to want to stay into the 9 to 5, whether it's real or not, right? Perceived matter of risk. Is a 9 to 5 actually safer? No, it's actually way riskier because, 100,000 people got laid off last year in tech. There's no safety. But I think society, maybe conditioning from the parents, conditioning, whatever you told yourself about risk, makes people stay in the 9 to 5 without realizing that that's actually a very risky position to be in.
And it's interesting for me to try to put myself into that position because my thought is, well, always get another job. Like the idea, like if I lose my job, I'm in trouble is a very, for me, strange mentality. But I get that people think that. I just don't know how to think that. It's like, well, if I get fired, I'll just get another job. Like I've never thought like I lost my job. My life is ruined. Existential crisis. What will I do? Am I a failure? Did I betray my parents? You know what I mean? Like, why is it that losing the job questions the entire paradigm? Right? That's something I struggle with.
I also think from your perspective, it's because you've been an entrepreneur and you know how to create and you know how to build yourself a job if you need to, right? Like you can do freelance work like you've done with Made This. You literally built yourself your job over here. Like you made it work, right? I don't think that's a skill set most people have. And I think everyone could develop it because as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you end up creating your own wealth. You end up creating your own thing. So I feel like it comes to a self-confidence thing, Stephen, like when you're 9 to 5 and you've got your job through applying for jobs, that's all you know. But if you've built your money and your career doing things which are more resourceful based, like entrepreneurship, or your own job or working for a startup, you probably have a little bit more confidence in yourself to be able to do it. For example, like right now, I'm not pretend Made This flops and it goes away. I'm no longer worried Like, what am I going to do? I'm like, okay, I'll go build something else, right? I'll go do freelance work. I'll do coaching. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, there's a set of skill sets that you built that you could go out and do it. Versus if the economy tanks, even if you've built these skill sets in a job, if there's no jobs, you can't do anything because you don't know how to build your own money. You're relying on someone else to pay you for that. So I do think it's just, you're right. It's a matter of perception, but I think once have to be resourceful for yourself, it doesn't go away. And Stephen, for you, that's probably the same. You've been your own entrepreneur, so you know how to do it. But if all you've done your whole life is only working 9 to 5, you might not feel that self-confidence.
Yeah, and I suppose what you're indicating is it's part of a larger narrative. You know, one of my favorite Neel stories is like I got my first freedom dollar. I was in South America, like this whole thing. But what that is it's a light that turns on that says I can live outside of the system. I have created something. So it's like the first time someone eats a tomato they grew in their garden, or the first time they crack an egg that their chicken laid, right? Like I am outside of the system now. There's this sort of excitement that's like, wow, you know, again, what you said, like if the grocery store were to close tomorrow, I've got an egg or I've got a tomato
I'm
or whatever.
self-sufficient.
And yeah, that implies something. That implies that, wow, I don't need to be dependent upon all these entities to live my life. Like, what would happen if the zombie apocalypse came? It's somewhere between prepper and, you know, I'm a 9 to 5 person, is that I am starting to exercise agency.
You asked a little bit about like why do 9 to 5ers not leave as well, and this also goes to people who are already in business, is the idea that there's a perfect decision. Now, I'll say this with what we're talking about here with, let's say, franchises. What's the perfect marketing decision to make? I only have X amount of dollars. I have to make this decision perfect, right? Where I think that's what a trap a lot of people fall into that I've always fallen into. It's like, holy crap, there's so many decisions. Which one do I do? Which one do I do? Let me analyze it. Let me be hyper vigilant about it. And it kind of comes from, like you said, blood money, right? Where like this is the money you have, and you feel like once it's gone, and you have to make the perfect decision. I think 9 to 5ers who want to get into entrepreneurship think the same. They're inundated with all these Instagram ads, with Sanchez, with start your own Amazon FBA business. They're like, which one of these opportunities do I do? There's so many. It has to be the perfect one. I only have one shot. I only have so many ways to do it. And it causes people to take inaction, whether you're in the business already or you want to get in entrepreneurship. I think that, again, it's a mindset thing with, and Josh Lederman talks a lot about this, is money's replenishable, time is not, right? You could always make more money. There's an infinite amount of money to make. But a lot of people act, and like the way they operate their business is like, I only have X amount, and after that, it's gone. Like, who said it's gone forever? Like, you can't make more money for the rest of your life. Are you kidding me? And like we talked about asymmetrical bets, as long as you make enough bets at one point, as long as you're smart bet, one of them is going to pay off the other ones 20 times over, right? And the analogy in like baseball, and I think Bezos said this quote, which is like, a lot of people think about life and 9 to 5s, I guess in this case, is baseball, right? Like you hit something, and in baseball, the max number of points you can get is 4 points, right? You hit a home run, the bases are low, you get 4 points. That's not the way it works in business. You could hit a home run and you get 1,000 points.
1,000
people
runs.
still think, 1,000 runs. You people think you can only get 4 max in business. That's not the way this works. So you might as well take more swings. You could replenish the money, take more swings. And it sounds scary up front, but I think when people start thinking that way, I think they could just move a lot faster.
When I hear people talk about what you're talking about, I always refer to YouTube's Google's decision to buy YouTube, and they when they first looked at it, the board is like, oh, we're not sure, let's talk about this in a week. And we come back in a week and the board is still split. But there was a fundamental premise behind Google Ventures, which was a bad decision is better than no decision. Because with a bad decision, you get data. But with no decision, you have nothing, right?
Yep.
And that's going back to the sports analogy. How does a quarterback know? How does a baseball player know, basketball player know something's not going to work? They had to have tried it, right? So part of success is I've tried everything. I was like, I know that if I try to do basketball stuff, if I try to do a hook from this position, 9 times out of 10, I will miss it. So this is not the time for me to do that, right?
Yep.
So that a bad decision is better than no decision. The idea of a perfect decision is all the way on the other side of it. So I want to zero in on that second group of people you said, they aren't fit and they still dive in. How does that differentiate? How can you tell the difference between people who are fit and who aren't fit? How do you parse that difference between those people? How can you, what have you developed? Because you've developed a skill set after having hundreds of these discovery calls.
Yeah.
What's the skill set you've developed to say, you are a fit and what you aren't a fit? Are you asking
Yeah.
questions? Are you getting the vibe in the interview?
Yeah. That's a great question because we've had 3,500 plus people apply for Made This. So I've done an insane number
3,500.
of, yeah, I've done an insane number of discovery calls. So I kind of know who's a fit or not a fit pretty immediately by the questions they ask. For example, I think a lot of people want a lot of surety. Like, is this the perfect thing? And they're like, I'm evaluating a bunch of stuff. They do a crazy amount of analysis. They're asking questions like, what are you going to do for me? We're going to get leads. And they're almost semi freaking out before they start. I already know it's not going to be a fit, right? Because when you get in the game, there's no certainty. There is no certainty. The only certainty you're going to have is when you develop enough skills, you would not be worrying about where's my next dollar coming from. It's a lot of people who need
They're
that
searching
level.
for they're trying to replace the certainty they have with their job. They're sort of walking out onto the diving board and they're like, okay, but I want to make sure that, this first jump, it's not too scary, right? They want you to remove the fear factor, right?
Yeah. Which part of
So
franchising does that, but there a lot of people are expecting 100% certainty with the jump, right? Like zero risk. I want zero risk. Like I'm gonna for sure replace my income, zero risk, and they're almost like freaking out about it. Those people, I already know it's not going to work because that's not the way this game works.
zero
Even if I
risk.
could provide every single lead, everything to do, something will go wrong. And if they're going to react to that in a way which they need certainty, then they should just stay in a 9 to 5 because that's a certain paycheck. So you let go, but that's a certain paycheck. And I think in franchising, especially, you find those people a lot. These are the people who want to get entrepreneurship and they think, hey, I'm a little bit more scared of getting into it. Why don't I look into franchising? So I feel like in franchising, you have to vet even more because naturally you're going to attract some of the people who want that level of certainty with a career which is inherently uncertain. That's the name of the game. So how do I vet them? I know pretty quickly by asking the questions or asking how much certainty. Are you going to actually be able to do this? You're going to freak out at every single thing that goes wrong.
So what certainty level do you offer them? If it's not zero.
So in franchising, the level of certainty is probably like halfway between if you're going to do it about yourself and like a 9 to 5, I'd say, because
50%.
because it's a proven out model. So you don't have to figure things out. There's a support system. A lot of the stuff is done for you, the tech, the back end. So when I started, for example, I had to kind of learn how to do a WordPress website, which is relatively easy, but it's kind of hard when you're like, all right, here's a domain, link the domain to the website, and you figure this out. You have to go online and figure out all these kind of things out. Then you're like, okay, I got to get a logo. And like, there's a million small micro things you have to figure out. Like, how to even buy a domain? Things like that.
What is
Typically,
hosting?
what is hosting? Like, wait, I have to link something for hosting? Like, how does this whole thing work? Like, there's so many stupid things that you do once and you never have to learn again. It's kind of useless. But all those things are removed in franchising. So like the learning curve is significantly less. And with that, they could just get the jump on running their business. Now, because of that, because there's less to learn, there's less risk there. Less risk of them saying, oh, I ran out of time, or like, hey, this is way too hard. Because it's like, dude, find cleaners, find customers. That's all you got to do. Tech's handled for you. Coaching's handled for you. Blueprints handled for you. Opspin was handled for you. Just do those only two things. That's it. Versus if you go at it yourself, you're learning all this other stuff, which maybe you like, maybe you don't, and then also doing that on top of it. So I'd say it eliminates a good chunk of that uncertainty with a proven model. Plus, we already do a bunch of stuff for you.
It's interesting because having worked for a business brokerage since 2017 as a writer, the number of case studies I've had to do, the number of conversations I've had to do, maybe I always contemplate like, how did I ever start my own business and sell it? Like, you realize over time, like, what a small percentage of a statistic that's always funny to share is 80% of businesses can't sell. They never built a system. They didn't build something that could function without them. They're the only holder of the skill set. They didn't create any systems. And when they go, right? So, okay, I was part of the 20%, but I was part of the 20% who survived more than 5 years, right? So like you keep looking down and then you think to yourself, like, who told me this was okay? Like, this is like the craziest thing to do. And over time, that has filtered into my consciousness such that I'm writing articles a lot of the times like why it's better to buy than build, right? Franchising sits right in the middle of that.
Mm,
How are people normally funding this? Are they cashing out an IRA? Or do they have an inheritance? Have they saved up a nest egg?
most people have the funding already since it's relatively low cost upfront. Some people are
Okay.
cashing out like you could do a ROBS, which like you pool from your 401k and you pay it back. A few people also do SBA loans as well for a certain amount too.
Okay.
We're pretty low cost franchise though, 50 to 70 all in. So um,
I
a
didn't
lot
know
of
if
people
that
have it liquid.
influenced, like, they're like, this is X% of my life savings, ergo, that influences the way they think about things.
Yeah. And like Steven, this is like a random note, and like I guess this comes as you build wealth and get, the longer you're in business, the longer you build wealth, the longer you're in a career in a 9 to 5, whatever, the more money you make. But I remember I was in college and I got a drinking in public ticket. Like it was like a big party on campus. I was like
50
20 or
bucks?
19 or something like that. Well, it was like $300. And I was like traumatized. Like my week was ruined. And for me, I'm like, oh my God, like, can you $300? That's like a fourth of my net worth. So like this is insane, right? And now, of course, $300, if still get a ticket, I'd still be pissed, right? However, just as a percent of net worth, things over time tend to be a lot less. However, we still think about it not as a percent of your net worth or a percent of your future net worth, but just as the dollar amount that it actually is, right? Like one of my point is like a lot of people still will get a $300 ticket and it will ruin their week. And it's like, dude, that like it also ruined your week when you were 19 years old and you got a drinking in public ticket. Like it's not relative anymore. I just bring that up as like I've only recently realized that because I still get pissed off at certain things where I'm like, why am I getting pissed off at this? Like, it was $10 or something like that, right? I just kind of have to catch myself and say, hey, I'm not 19-year-old Neel again. Like,
It's
there's
it's the
different levels of
remnants
this.
of who you are, and deep-seated beliefs about money and about wasting stuff, right? Like
Right.
in the Asian mentality, anything that's not spent on your agency is a waste, right? Like that was
Mm-hmm.
imposed on me that could have been avoided, right? And that's what's fueling
Yeah.
that.
Well said.
What's the problem with the current way franchising is done?
I had a call yesterday and it was with someone who's interested in franchising, and I think they'll probably sign up. They were really pumped when hearing about our franchise because they talked to a bunch of other franchise and they're like, you guys provide so much more. And I didn't know because I never came from the franchise world. I didn't build it based off of how franchises normally done. I just thought, what would someone like me want to do 10 years ago? Right. So that's how we built it. I think franchising, typically the franchise which are in the system fall back on the fact that they're providing information, right? And they're like, I give you information and a brand and SOPs, and you're paying me for that. And I think that's a very old school way of thinking. Like information now is extremely cheap. Anyone can get information. But the way franchising's always been done is information was gated. Right? Franchising started in the 70s, 60s, whatever it was, a long time ago. Back then, there wasn't the power of the internet, there wasn't YouTube, there weren't online courses. So that mentality of franchising still, I'm giving you information, I'm giving you the brand, I'm giving you SOPs, I'm giving you basic guidance. You pay me and it's a worthy trade. And for a lot of people, to be honest, it still is because it allows them to get into business, allows them to make asymmetrical bets, allows them to have that sense of more security, right? So like for them, maybe it's still worth it. I still think that's the old school way where they're trading information and basic support for royalties. I think the way we're coming at it is completely different. Information is information. That's like the lowest hanging fruit part of it. But then there's a bunch of other stuff the franchisor will do for you, as well as the support behind it and constant innovation. I think a lot of franchises miss the fact that you have to move extra fast in this day and age. Like if you're not on AI right now and you're a franchisor, what are you doing? Right? You're already behind the ball. And if franchisors just rest on the laurels of I give you information, that's why you're paying me, it's not going to work. I think the new way of franchising is you have to iterate fast, very, very fast. And the people who can't iterate fast, either because they don't have the mental capacity to do it, they don't know they need to, or they're just kind of old school, they're not going to win.
Yeah, and I think what else is funny is unexpectedly, as you give that free information out, sometimes it serves as a sales funnel. Right? Someone's
Man,
like, I watched your
totally.
free videos. Can I give you some money?
It's totally. And like, it's funny because we're doing that on our YouTube channel, on the Made This Franchise YouTube channel, just giving out information, not stuff in the ops manual, but just like, here's what we're working on the inside. Here's stuff. And most people are like, oh my God, I can't believe how transparent you are. I learned a ton from this. And they're like, instead of me just doing it myself, can I pay you? I'm like, wow, yeah, okay, come on, franchising.